We'll start now. It's 3 minutes past time. Great, folks. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody, once again. And thank you everyone for joining us from various parts of the world. And welcome to our first webinar about digital innovation in the modern day sports ecosystem, which is powered by Fanisco. And it's wonderful to see so many folks in the audience joining from different corners of the world. So yeah, thank you so much for joining in. I do understand that there's a time difference, and so yeah, great on you guys. Just before we start, I'll be moderating. My name is Venu, and I just wanted to quickly point out a few housekeeping pointers for this webinar. We all, just wanted to check that I'm audible to everybody. So just give a thumbs up if that's so. If there's an issue, put it in the chat box and we'll check it out. And yep, so we have everybody on mute except for the speakers and the panelists. However, the chat window is open for all, and we would love to hear from you in terms of if you have any questions, if you have any comments. We would love to have them on board. The format of this webinar is slightly different from what you may have seen before. So what we have is 3 speakers who would be making very short presentations in the beginning, and post that we wanted to have a detailed panel discussion of sorts. And we have 6 panelists on board, in fact, 5 panelists on board. I'm the 6th being the moderator. So yeah, when I say panelists, I wanted to also introduce you to 2 of the panelists who are joining us from Fanisco, which is Satish, the CEO, and Arvind, who is the co-founder, along with being the Chief of Business Development. So Satish and Arvind, can we have a quick introduction from you guys?
Hi, everyone. My name is Satish Chittibabu. I'm the co-founder CEO of Fanisco. Fanisco is a fan engagement and analytics company, and happy to be on this webinar with 3 great speakers. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Nice to see a lot of the folks coming from different parts of the world. My name is Arvind Sampath, and I am the co-founder and Chief Business Officer of Fanisco. I lead all of our sales, marketing, and partnerships initiatives. Excited to kickstart this webinar series. We have some great speakers lined up. Excited for this session.
Awesome. Yep, great. Thank you, Satish and Arvind. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce to you our first speaker for today. And we are really fortunate to have Jeff Wilson out here with us. And he's joining us all the way from Belfast in Ireland. And as you can see from the screen, Jeff runs his own strategic marketing and communications consultancy, and he's worked with some of the really big brands and sports organizations on in areas like strategic marketing, planning, and digital fan engagement as well. And what's interesting is Jeff is also a part-time lecturer in the in marketing at the University of Queen's in Belfast. So Jeff, the stage is yours. Yep, let's get started.
Thank you, Benny. Thank you for asking to speak at this webinar. If you can go to the next slide. So as the guys have just mentioned, my background has been working within a number of organizations, first of all within British Telecom, and that's quite interesting for me personally, because it's taking business experience and moving it into the sports area, which I think is starting to happen more now. But I was 10 years at the Irish Football Association here in Belfast, so working actually in a soccer federation, so understanding how the sport and how the sports environment works. And then, as mentioned, I set up my own consultancy working with a number of global brands, from football to basketball to mixed martial arts to a range of different areas. So I don't say that to say, oh, look at me. I'm just an average person. But when you start to build up all of this experience, and that's what's great about these webinars, is you can try to learn from each other. So I think my latest, I've been to 89 countries around the world doing this sort of area of strategic planning, governance, fan engagement, and marketing. So next slide, please. So to me, I think there's 3 broad areas that technology is affecting the sports organizations at present. I think number 1 is on athlete performance. So that's everything from player tracking systems to health and even sleep systems, really to increase that X%, that maybe 1, 2, 3% on the athlete performance. And technology is really coming into this space. I think number 2 is in the area of the stadium and the administration And that's everything from digital transformation, so looking at processes that are manual and trying to make them more efficient and effective, right the way through to CRM and everything else in between stadium and admin. But for me, and the purpose of this module is all in the area of fan engagement. And I'm seeing a lot more areas and people that I work with where technology is making a real big impact in the area of fan engagement. And I just want to touch on that and a little bit more in the next slide. And really, this next slide is a model that I co-created with a good friend of mine called David Fowler. And on the next slide, you will see a model that we tried to create in 2016. And really what this says is it depends on where you are. Are you on site at the venue or stadium? Are you off site at the venue or the stadium? Are you on match day or game day, or is it non-match day or game day at happening? And what we did is when we pulled this model together, what we decided and what we found out very quickly is most people were doing fan engagement match day on site, so at the venue and engaging their fans. And that was great. And that could be things such as the traditional fan zones, but it also could be, for example, on the technology side, mobile ticketing, cashless payments. But what we then tried to do is to say, well, you can engage fans in using technology more than that. You could be at the venue, but not on game day. And that, for example, might be if you're non-game day and you're at the venue, that could be, for example, a museum tour or a stadium tour. And that, for example, could be the use of VR or AR technology that can really enhance the fans' experience. Then we looked at it and we said, you know what? Well, you've got when you're on game day, but you're not at the site, and using technology to bring the fans closer to the live action. And that could be, for example, OTT platforms, but also could be the use of artificial intelligence for for highlights being cut onto social platforms. And then the last area is about connecting the fans where you're off-site on non-match day. And that is all in the area that I think in the area of esports, fantasy gaming, mobile gaming. So I think what we try to do in this model is to try and to tell people, yes, you've got match day on site and you need to enhance that live experience. But what you also have to do, you've got to look at these other areas in the model, these other areas, and make sure you're engaging the fans using technology and content to really engage with the fans. So next slide, please. So to me, I think there's a number of hot topics. And again, the purpose of this initial is just to get the conversation started. For me, just to give you some thoughts, I think there will be the use of virtual reality, VR, I think is going to get more and more and more. Apple recently have just taken over NextVR. You also have Facebook doing a lot more in this space. So you've got to ask the question, why? But even when you look at this area where there could be less fans in a stadium, maybe VR is one option. Not all, but is one option. I think you've got augmented reality where you are looking and taking a piece of that content that is digital and augmenting that with and in the real life. And we're starting to see a lot of that within the gaming area. I think there's going to be lots in esports. In this and during this lockdown, we've definitely seen the growth in esports and lots of people looking to really capitalize on that. But what hasn't been talked much about is the mobile gaming market. And we have all of these games now, and more people are now enhancing, and partners and sponsors are getting traction through the likes of these mobile games. I think there's a couple of other broad areas that we are seeing. I think we are seeing athletes, the players are becoming content providers. They're ones that are nearly becoming bigger than the clubs with the following that they've got and the following that they've, and you can see the different challenges that they put out over the last number of weeks. I think there is some area in the single view of the customer data. Data is very important for me, and having a single view of the customer, I think, is another hot topic that sports organizations need to really grasp. And I think the last couple for me is with the likes of COVID-19, let alone just the whole efficiency and processes, there is cashless and contactless. So cashless and contactless payments, et cetera, I think is getting more important.
Absolutely.
And all of this, and for me, the last bit is, before I finish, artificial intelligence. I think this will take a big space in our world. We're already seeing that in the areas of voice recognition and in other areas, whether it's a Netflix or Amazon. So to me, I think artificial intelligence is going to play a bigger part. For me personally, just to close off, I do think the future will be, we will have a chip in our hand. I believe that chip will be our passport that gets us from Northern Ireland into the UK or into the US. That will be our passport to get in. That will also be our ticket to get into the game. That will be when I go past a beacon, the chip will know, because of the amount of data that's personalized to me. It'll say, Jeff, you like hamburgers, and you like a hamburger but with no sauce in it. A hamburger with no sauce, here's a special offer, go and get it, it's only two meters away. I think when I go to the game and we score a goal, the chip will be able to, through the mobile, say what my heart rate is. Wow. I think that personalization of that data will be even more ingrained. So to me, that's where I think this will definitely go. I think it will be a chip that will really personalize our experience through the mobile, through data on every angle, and that data will be totally personalized to you, not only in the sports environment, but in the wider. So I think my next one is just my contact details. So the purpose of these first 3 or 4 slides is really just to give you a snippet, a snapshot of certain areas, to touch on the importance of fan engagement. And without doubt, technology is going to play a bigger part. And companies like yourselves are going to play an even better and bigger and more important role in this whole area of fan engagement. We cannot forget the physical side, the fan zones and all of that. We cannot forget that side. Yep. But technology will play a bigger part. And what I try to do is to touch on some hot topics. There are others like 5G, but that's for another time. Thank you.
Awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much. I mean, it was really amazing to see the wide range of experience, that you brought out, and the interesting fan engagement model that you brought out. That was something which was quite, quite interesting to see, right? And I think that the point that you made about the chip and the passport, that's something which is definitely the future. I think, yeah, everything is driven by data, and I definitely feel that can be a reality in the times to come. So awesome, Jeff. Thank you once again. So yeah, so well, it's time to now move on to our second presentation. And once again, it's my honor to introduce another amazing industry professional to you guys. So, as you can see from your screen, Todd has, almost 3 decades of experience with team technology, and he's worked across the NBA, NHL, and NFL. And, the best part is he's known as an innovator in sports technology due to the methodologies and the collaborations applied to develop ideas and, complete projects while maximizing ROI. And I think ROI is something which is really the key point, the driving point here. And yep, without wasting much time, Todd, all over to you. The floor is yours.
Okay, you can go ahead and next. Yeah, I've had obviously a privilege, prior to my starting Tech Foundry in 2017 to work for almost 30 years with pro sports teams here in the United States. Currently, I'm based out of Dallas, but I've lived all over the place because of it. I've had great opportunity to build stadiums and arenas and practice facilities and be involved in some pretty significant events like NBA Finals and NHL Winter Classic and a lot of others. But technology has really grown or evolved with pro sports over the course of my career, it's been a great kind of fun ride to see where it's been and where it's headed go next. As far as the fan experience or fan engagement, as far as current sports trends, second screen seems to be really taking over a lot of the center stage on that, and how teams and venues are actually engaging with fans. There's beyond just the digital ticketing, there's been other things, like Jeff mentioned, like augmented augmented reality and VR that have already kind of been out there that people are really trying to leverage to better engage with fans. I mean, other stuff like gamification is another one that for all intents and purposes has in a lot of cases sort of been the precursor for teams preparing for sports betting, which is coming very soon, here to the United States. I know UK has had that, I think Australia as well, a number of other countries for many years, but very new to the United States. And the teams and leagues are eagerly looking to leverage that as a revenue source, and gain more insight into the fans, because really the core of fan engagement, and building better fan experience really is around data analytics, and better understanding your fans. Other things, experiential type of stuff, through second screen, in event, and in venue, like Jeff mentioned as well, like tours and things, but also on game days, like chalk talks with players and coaches and meet and greets and those type of things that also drive revenue for organizations. Wayfinding as well, is another element that has really taken a lot of attention, because trying to drive more revenue, as well, through making that fan experience less friction, or more frictionless, basically ensures that fans will return. So I mean it extends beyond just the front doors of the venue now, where teams are integrating services and applets like Waze that will actually route them literally from their front door, best traffic routing, and then give them the opportunity to buy parking, which is another revenue generator for teams and venues. So that way they can avoid traffic issues and that type of thing, and alleviate traffic around the venue, because that tends to be a problem as well. And then helps drive fans from parking into the venues on foot as pedestrians, and also ties in sponsors like sports bars and retail and restaurants and those type of things along the way, and does things like the messaging through Bluetooth or through the app, like Jeff mentioned as well, incentivizing the fans and guests coming to the events. Concession purchases, that type of thing, contactless, as well, especially around now with all the concern around COVID-19 and getting fans back into live events. I think that's going to be the big driver with teams now. It's really going to force a lot of them to really put a lot more effort and energy and investment behind engaging fans outside the venue and outside of specific event days. I mean, they've already been doing a lot of that through things like building entertainment districts and developing esports teams and that type of thing. But again, the data analytics really is at the core of all that. Some of the other kind of neat technologies that teams are looking at, evolve around IoT in the home and artificial intelligence, and technology like Amazon Alexa and Google Home, that, actually will, react, to, let's say, breaking news from teams that, would report, or, during an event, would actually react and, light up, or, that type of thing, have crowd noise that, would make the in-home viewer at an event, feel like they were having that in-venue experience.
Right.
Outside of that, those types of things, again, better broadcasting options are also driving a lot more second screen and a lot of changing fan behavior and preferences. The Steam integration and fan, experience is also something that's fairly new that a lot of organizations are also leveraging, in order to, develop, more grassroots, fan engagement, earlier on, through the even in schools, and in promoting technology and, the different other arts, their engineering, math, science, all of that stuff that, also encourages, entrepreneurial, type of activities with sports technology and technologies around entertainment. I think that, kind of to wrap up, so we can move on. I mean, really, fan experience, is evolving. There's a lot of different technologies that have been tried and have succeeded. Some have not been as successful. But really the core of it is the data analytics. That's the real key, to, those organizations that have, seen success. It's driving, better demographic information on the people that they're trying to engage with, so they can, more appropriately market and sell, to them through things like second screen and radio and TV broadcasts. We can talk more about it, in questions and answers, but I want to move on so Patricio can get to his presentation.
Great, Todd. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yep. So yeah, I think those were some amazing insights, Todd, and I was particularly interested in the Steam integration that you spoke about. That's something which was, relatively new in terms of my understanding of this entire industry. Yep. So that's
I mean, it's a great grassroots effort, with teams, really to start, driving that engagement, even early on, elementary school, type of things. It's a innovative way to drive fandom and get
awesome.
the fans experience early.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Todd, once again. So yep, now then, last but not the least, we have a fine gentleman from Argentina, from Latin America. So Patricio, welcome on board. He's the CEO and founder of Papel Pecado, which is a sports marketing agency. And his focus is on digital innovation and crypto sports, which is very, very interesting. So Patricio, without me wasting much time, I would hand over the floor to you. All yours.
Thank you, Benny, and welcome everyone to. I am based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So this is just past half morning. And Todd and Jeff covered a lot of the things I wanted to talk about, but this is good because it shows that sports marketing as a platform is the best global platform, and challenges and opportunities are almost the same everywhere. But here in Latin America, as we are perhaps a step behind what's happening in Europe and in the US, we have a wide thing of opportunities. Let me first talk about what's Latin America and its sports industry market, so we have a better approach to how to deal with it. Latin America has an advantage. We are 630 plus million inhabitants, but we share language. As in Brazil, well, Brazil, as you know, it's another continent in itself. And almost 50% are die-hard soccer fans. And when you engage in conversations in Latin America with any stranger, when you speak about soccer, you become friends immediately. That was happening yesterday with Jeff, who is working in Belfast, but we speak about football or soccer. And there are a few of interesting facts. 99% of those fans will never change its alliance to its team. You change countries, you change works, you change wives, even you change of sex, but you never change of your football preferences. And 87% of those fans will engage in conversations with them. But you know what? We need an opportunity, we need an excuse to engage and to talk with them. And this is where digital innovation comes very handy, and is the great platform to start or create conversation with this gigantic amount of fans. Next slide, please. Look about the opportunity. You know that Latin America almost receives 6% of all the investment in sports industry. Although COVID will kill a little bit of that money, it's a huge industry. And in Latin America, when we look at this 6%, you said this is a small amount, but it is, if we turn around, we are knowing that we have an excellent opportunity of growing. Next slide, please. This is a way, look at, this is interesting to see how we are now talking about soccer. Then we'll talk a little bit about the other important sports in Latam, but as you know, soccer is the main sport. Sponsorships and broadcast rights are the one that takes a lot of chunk in the top leagues in the world. But let's see what happens in Latam, and especially in Argentina, how the match day revenues changes and are more and more important. Next slide, please. As you see, look at that match day in this area is about 40% of all revenues. But let's see what's happening in Argentina. And this is how this COVID thing is hurting revenues, not only in Argentina, but also around the world. I was reading the other day that the NFL will lose almost 50% of its revenue if the games goes on at closed stadiums. And we know what happened on Sunday when the Bundesliga was the first league that resumed sports. We all watched the Borussia Dortmund game where ratings skyrocket, but the stadiums were empty. And so the sensation is different. And also it hurts a lot of revenue. So we have to understand how to engage with those fans that are not on the stadium. Next one, please. Boca Juniors is the biggest club here in Argentina, and is one of the biggest clubs in the world, and it's a global brand. If you see how money gets earned, we can, as you know, here in Latin America, except in Chile, where all clubs, all teams are private by law. In Latin America, teams are non-profit organizations, so each team has different members. Boca Juniors have 50K official members and 285K members. Those are the ones that can engage with the club, but they don't have a place in the stadium. And if you see those numbers, you will see that almost 60% of all its revenues comes in from fans. 60% of those numbers comes in from fans. So if marketing has an awesome opportunity, but what should we aim? Next slide, please. 6, again, I want to stress this out because this will speak about clearly of how digital innovation can boost those 60%. And we have to be clear in one thing. We here in Latin America are very passionate. And so soccer sells emotions. This is the business we are. We have to sell emotions. But to understand how the business works, we must bear in mind that as a fan-centered industry, soccer is not just a 90-minute game or what happens before the game or after the game. Soccer is a 24/7 by 365 industry, and we must know how to reach and talk with those fans every day of every week. And again, digital innovation, that's what we are talking about, is the perfect weapon, it's a perfect tool to get in touch with those fans. Next slide, please. And now we're talking, and we again of this word, the innovation digital will take us to work on challenges and opportunities. As Jeff said about the in and out stadium opportunities, post-COVID will change what's going on, but it will change it in 2 ways. One, it will accelerate the digital innovation. One thing that this pandemic showed is that not all teams were ready or have a digital innovation strategy. And that's why they couldn't reach or talk to the fans. And finally, they're losing very important monetizing opportunities. What this shows us, are we prepared to be in an industry with no fans? Will fans return to the stadium? Will fans be afraid to return to a stadium because of all the sanitation and cleanliness opportunities? So here we have a huge opportunity for touchless experiences, from home experiences, and for interactive merchandising. And we are trying to work on these areas. And from a social media point of view, we are talking about, OTTs and what have you. Here in Argentina, our national team has AFA Play, that's have an OTT. But here's another challenge. Facebook Watch has 720 million viewers. So it is more important to create an OTT or go to a platform that already is working. And in this case, it's important to understand the fatigue. There are a lot of seminars, there are a lot of content that perhaps is not working as it should work. Here our user-generated content is important, but to create that content, you have to be content that's relevant. For example, as you know, when the Toronto Raptors won the NBA title for the first time, they had a super fan, a guy that went to all the games since 10 years ago, and perhaps it's more interesting than monetizing the final score of the game, to monetize a history of that fan. So here were a lot of opportunities where start working on. Last year also in LinkedIn, the Boston Celtics asked their fans what type of content they want to see in their social media feed. And almost 80% of those fans talk about behind the scenes. So, because results, scores, and data, you can see and show it and view it from everywhere. But fans want to see the personal things that athletes do. And here where we have another great opportunity. Jeff talked about fan engagement opportunities and fan engagement solutions. And we all talk about second screen and IVR and VR. And this is an important thing to see. Stadiums here in Argentina and almost around the world are used 2 or 3 as a sports venues, of course, are used 2 or 3 times per month. What happens on the other 27 days of the month? As you know, here, 2 big teams in Argentina, Boca and River, have museums, but in Spain, Barcelona and Real Madrid have museums. And in Barcelona, the Barcelona Museum is the 3rd most important touristic attraction. Here in Argentina, Boca Juniors Museum is the 3rd museum more visited. So why don't we can create an AR or VR experience around that area or around that museums? We have to put those venues in value. We have to understand how to monetize those things. And we have a new and gigantic opportunity with blockchain and digital currencies. We are working now with a big club in Argentina to create its own digital currency, its own utility token. And it's a great way of creating value. One club in Brazil, Atlético Mineiro, already created its coin, its vertical coin that's called Galo coin. And we want to focus on the opportunity that blockchain and cryptocurrencies will bring to the market. An utility coin, an utility token, where you can use it only to engage with the club, and here's the engagement we were trying to understand, will be a gigantic opportunity where you can buy season tickets or pay your memberships or engage with different meet and greets and sales promotion activities. So here is an area very important where we can invest, because this region needs a lot of investment, and we need someone that can understand what digital currencies and cryptocurrencies we are talking about. Next one.
Awesome, Patricio. So we can quickly summarize.
Yep, sorry about that. Yep, no and again, so I have to sorry about that.
No problem. Right.
We talk about the international opportunities. Juventus is a global brand, and look what Borussia Dortmund did the other week with their virtual fans. They created a virtual fan experience for their Chinese fans. Almost 6 million people engaged with them. So we must understand that soccer teams are a global brand, but we have to develop and create them. And here's again where digital innovation and technological platforms coming very handy. Sorry about that, and we'll take questions about that. Because as you see, the opportunities are there. What we need to understand is that as teams, as clubs here in Latin America are non-profit, we must educate and help audiences and their management to understand the opportunities that digital innovation brings to them.
Amazing. Thank you, Patricio. That was a wonderful presentation. I mean, we all knew about football, how crazy Latin America is, as a continent. But, those numbers actually put a lot of things into perspective. And, it's a great learning for us when you mentioned that 60% figure. It's like amazing, right? So, yeah, which kind of brings us to the meat of this program when it comes to discussing, the fan engagement part in detail. So now we'll be having, the second part of the program is about a panel discussion. And as we mentioned at the beginning, so what we'll do is we'll maybe just quickly stop sharing our screen and we'll put all the speakers on the video on your screen so we could see everyone. And also, guys, there would have been a few polls being shared. So yeah, please go ahead and, put in your thoughts on those as well. I did see a couple of audience questions as well. So I think, yeah, to start off this panel discussion, since Jeff has been patiently waiting since his presentation, I'll probably go with him first. So Jeff, my first question is for you. In terms of digital innovations, what are the potential quick wins that an organization could see at this stage?
Yeah, great question. Suppose it depends on what part of the pyramid that you're in. If you're at the top end, the elite end, there's maybe more things that you can do. If you're at the grassroots end, there's maybe it's a different thing. But let's touch on the top end. For me, I think there needs to be something around the cashless payments and ticketless apps. That probably is some quick win because of the COVID-19. It's all about less contact. So I think people will have to do that. I went to Orlando City Football Club and everything is all ticketless through their app. I went to Anderlecht Football Club last year and all of their payment was cashless. So I think ticketless and also cashless payments, and then linked in with that is the database to create that single view of the customer. So to me, I think that's something straight away, that sort of ticketless, cashless data analytics. I do think there is something about the content side. That content side will have to be about behind the scenes content, as the guys were mentioning earlier on. And I do think there needs to be something around about archive footage and using those bits and pieces before the live content comes together. But when you're using this content, there's a lot of activity that you can do and you can add to, for example, the live games. And that can be everything from a quiz that comes through the technology. That could be through online betting that comes through the technology. That could be data from the likes of a data partner and having that data. So I think that's what I would say. I think the last bit I would say is this is the time for clubs to embed in their community. Absolutely. Whether that's through technology or whatever, but this is the time for the clubs to reach out to their community and to show the love, because that's get it back to where we were before. And really get into their community the way that is happening in many at the minute on the back of the COVID-19, calling out older people in their area using the data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, those are the 3 or 4 quick wins that I would see, specifically talking on the elite end.
Yep, interesting. Absolutely. I think, yeah, this is, somewhere it's also a blessing in disguise for fans, if I would say so. It's kind of brought in the leagues and clubs to kind of, get everybody together, forcefully so, but then, at least something is happening in terms of innovation, right? So, yeah, Satish, you had something to ask Todd, I believe.
Yeah, one other question that I want to ask Todd is, Todd, in the 60s and 70s, when with the coming up of TV and radio getting really popular, that created a herd experience, right? Everybody watched the same thing, everybody kind of tuned in to listen to the same amen and all. How do you think digital innovation can create a personalized experience for the modern day sports fan?
Well, I think, the modern sports fan has actually evolved. I mean, it's it's gotten, where now, I mean, fans, don't specifically follow, teams necessarily anymore. I mean, a lot of players have developed very strong brands, and they follow players. I know a lot of teams have become very sensitive to that as far as, their ticket sales efforts, as far as packaging, tickets that, they can kind of break up, those marquee players, into separate packages to, to drive more sales. But, I think, second screen has really been the key, to that. There's been a lot of innovation around that, especially, with accommodating, the evolving fan. There's a lot of technology integration now that, with a simple click, on a player, you can get, stats, that type of thing, because there's a lot of interest in that, especially around baseball. Baseball is a very stats driven, sport. But, things like, where you could click on, a player's jersey and actually, be given offers, to purchase, those type of things. So, teams, are looking, to better engage, through broadcast and other methods, but, the key is, they're also needing to drive revenue. I think, the out of game, out of event, out of venue, engagement really is especially, with the current COVID-19 crisis, is going to, really, push teams to connect more than they have really thought they needed to in the past, just to, for revenue opportunities. I mean, I know, Patricio had mentioned, some numbers. I know, game revenue, in the NFL averages about, 38% of total rev. Baseball, Major League Baseball is about 70. I mean, that's some major financial hits that those leagues will absorb if they don't, get fans into games, these coming, seasons. But and then it just makes sense, because you got to figure, I mean, there's tens, hundreds of thousands more fans out there that will never set foot, at your game or in your venue, and that, could be, just as avid, as the guy that lives down the street from the stadium and has season tickets. So, I think really, putting some focus there, and trying to drive, even more of a in-game experience while the games are in progress, for those types of fans is going to be, beneficial for the teams, and something they really need to go after. But then also, the fan experience outside of events, with people that, may never attend your games. A lot of organizations are building, entertainment districts and mixed use developments around their venues, to help with a lot of that, and also drive revenue, outside of game days as well. So there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, again, kind of looking at the silver lining, I think, it's going to force teams to be a little more creative and innovative in their thinking and how they apply technology, and, and maybe get, drive a little higher threshold of risk, and trying things that they might not have necessarily really, thought was necessary in the past.
Benny, if I might chip in a second of what Todd
Sure.
was saying about athletes and teams. And as you know, the team with most social followers in the world is Barcelona, with 260 million. But Cristiano Ronaldo has 400 million followers.
Yep.
So one athlete has double digits, the best team. Barcelona and Real Madrid social media followers are lower than Cristiano Ronaldo. So, and regarding fan engagement, then we must start to understand if it's not better to follow, as Todd was saying, athletes, and create content, real content around athletes and not around teams. If teams don't get creative. And that's here another thing that is important to mention. What is fan engagement? Fan engagement is just a like, because if we measure it in that way, I think that these metrics are wrong, in my opinion. it just is used for marketing managers and media agencies to say, hey, I use my budget correctly because I have 1% of engagement. What about the other 99%? We're forgetting 99% of the fans or 99% of our budget. A quick example. In this hiatus, Barcelona had 178 million engagement, 178. But they have 260 million fans. So it's around less than 1% per fan. So what we are talking about? And again, what is fan engagement? Fan engagement is a possibility of getting a like or of selling. If we need to sell, I think that metrics are screwing things up.
I think just to follow up on that point, I'm starting to see now those really clued in athletes, the really good ones with big following, they're actually doing deals with broadcasters, and they're broadcasting actually the live game to their following. So I think that's going to be a very interesting area to look out for. Those athletes who become content creators that actually are nearly have a bigger footprint on social to live stream the event. I think where the technology will come in is on the back of that event, and organizations like yourselves is how do you improve the engagement and how do you monetize it? So you don't, to me, you don't monetize first. To me, you engage the fan and you build a deep connection and a deep relationship. The monetization will come as natural if you do that right. And with the products that you guys are developing, when you have that live content, if you're bringing in, for example, live betting, if you're bringing in live quizzes, if you're bringing in different other areas, guess the score, that's where people become interactive and become engaging. And it's using that technology. You know, I always say it's like the Twitch way, you know, people, it's much more engaging the way that the young people want to view and interact with sport. And that's where technology, like what you guys are doing, I think will really, you know, come to the fore.
Sorry, and Jeff, you were talking about reaching out to the community, and this is very important, I think. And we coined here in Argentina a term, I would say it in Spanish, and we'll translate it, responsabilidad social deportiva, corporate sports responsibility. Every brand in any moment of their life has spoken or used sports as a medium communication. But they come in and they come out. Why don't we create, and here technology comes being very handy, and especially AR and VR and social media, why don't clubs or teams reach out to their communities and have brands create these social experiences? Look what LeBron James is doing with this I Promise School. He has a higher engagement with these social initiatives than when he talks or has content as a Lakers player.
You know, I think that really, you know, is probably that difference between, you know, the ones that are successfully, you know, engaging with fans and those that are struggling with it, is that they, you know, some are just putting out content for the sake of putting out content. And, you know, and on the other hand, though, you have others that, you know, are making calls to action, you know, especially around, you know, times like these where, you know, they have, you know, the teams or the players, you know, are engaging with the communities on food drives and things like that, you know, just it drives, you know, more of that emotional engagement, you know, rather than just, you know, hey, here's some more stats, or here's a, you know, a historic video of a slam dunk, you know, of Michael Jordan's or something like that. You know, it has to be meaningful, you know, to the people. That's what, you know, like, that's why I said, I mean, it needs to really grab people, you know, personally. And, you know, the ones that react to it, those are the ones, you know, that, you know, are really engaged and, you know, really start to develop, you know, those deeper demographic profiles that help, you know, like Jeff was saying, on the back end with the monetization.
Yeah, and this also what sorry to chip in again. What Todd was talking about is something was a FOMO, fear of missing out. Hey, I have to be in TikTok. Why? What do we do in TikTok?
Yep.
I need to have an archive of my video of my slam dunk of 1988 or my goal of why? What's the meaning of that? I have to. We think we have with there are new players. Yesterday, for example, What do we know is Bilibili? Bilibili is a Chinese YouTube. It's growing enormously. Yesterday, the UFC had the first sports organization to have an account in Bilibili. Juventus, when a global brand, was a huge fandom in China, uses Weibo, WeChat, and Douyin. That are words that for many people are just like, acronyms. And those are the new social platforms that sports as a global brand should look at.
Interesting. Great. I think, Arvind, you had one specific question, right? After that, we'll have a couple of audience questions and then close out.
Absolutely, yeah. This one is for Patricio. We're all like fascinated by the Latin America market, especially soccer, right? So you've watched Boca Juniors, Gimnasia, and several other sports organizations, right? In LATAM, specifically like in Argentina, Chile. What are some of the digital innovations that these organizations are implementing or have implemented into their daily operations that are doing exceptionally well, right? That can be adapted by other sports organizations across the world?
I think for starters, is the other way around. And thank you, Arvind. I think that Latin America should look to what the big leagues in the US or the great brands are doing in UK. Boca Juniors has a gigantic fandom. Again, it's a global brand. And we are trying to create new, exciting experiences. We are trying to create, as we talk about their stadium and their museum, and create an AR and VR experience around a scavenger hunt where you can visit the stadium and have different brands to show you the history of that venue. Because as you all know, soccer stadiums are the new temples. There go fans, you go on a Sunday, instead of going to church, you go to soccer stadiums. But again, it's used two times per month. We must monetize with digital innovation and technology, and here AR and VR experience can very, very handy, and use those stadiums or those venues the rest of the 28 days of the week. When I was in the US, I visited Yankee stadiums and it was packed. I visited the Mercedes-Benz stadiums in Atlanta. That's an amazing venue. And again, they charge $25 for a tour, but they didn't have an interactive experience. And here's why I think that VR and AR will work well. And other teams are trying to do with this COVID thing. For example, Gimnasia is working on a virtual club. If you want to visit the team, you go to their new site and you can visit, locker rooms and the stadiums, and you can have a virtual tour. And this is, again, the way to engage with fans. Again, we are selling emotions. Let's deal with emotions. And when we speak about emotions, your rational levels get down, and we can monetize easier and better.
Awesome. So I think, yeah, we have probably time for one last or maybe last couple of questions. I'll take the audience questions now. And there were a couple of interesting points made by the audience in the Q&A. So I think Nagesh and Bala had raised this question. And what I'll do is I'll combine the two questions because they are kind of related. So, first question by Bala was about fanless stadiums being a reality, which is kind of already being addressed a bit in our discussions. But the second question is also around fanless stadiums, but they wanted to ask what was the recent experience which happened in the Bundesliga, I think last weekend. And, there were a lot of issues with regards to not getting the same feel that you get with a fan-filled stadium, right? And there were a lot of new innovations and technologies being talked about with regards to, the fanless stadium concept. So maybe I'll ask Todd this question, and I'll come back to Patricio and Jeff later. So Todd, you had anything to add on this?
I think, like I said before, I think this is going to drive a lot more creativity and innovation, with the fanless, just, for the simple fact that, the leagues are going to take huge, financial losses. But, I think, again, the ones that will end up on top are the ones that are going to probably, are going to take more risks. They're going to try things. I mean, I think probably one of the criticisms, or concerns was, was fan noise, reaction to scoring and that kind of thing. So, they may, start to pump some of that, even in venue, to, for the benefit of the players as well, to help motivate them. Things like that, just to kind of enriching that in-game experience, for all involved. Things like that. I mean, they may try. It's it'll be interesting to see. I think again, there'll be opportunities to do the virtual overlays for advertising, and that's not kind of thing to drive more revenue. I know teams, MLS is already talking about tarping areas of their stadiums with advertising to help. It's going to be interesting to see, but and I think they're going to probably maybe change maybe a little bit of the format of broadcasting, where they're going to maybe shoot the pitch or the court or the ice tighter, so it doesn't show those seats that are unoccupied. We'll see. Looking forward to kind of experiencing that.
Interesting. So Jeff, you were, I think, closer to the action, being in Europe. So right, what was the reaction there?
Yeah, lots of the data that we see is actually the numbers were really high at the start, and as the second half came, the numbers dropped off in terms of viewers. And a lot of people felt that the same experience, you weren't sampling the same product without the fans and the noise. They also actually even said that the referee was making different decisions as well, because they weren't being influenced by the fans cheering. And that's what you love in terms of, in this game, it was obviously football. So for me, I think at the venue, it'll be like a training ground. And that doesn't add anything. It doesn't motivate the players. It doesn't feel like a real event. Football is about community. It's a beautiful game, but the game is very much without the players, which is a community in itself, and the fans. That's where the community is, and we need to get back to that. I think that the interesting bit will be how, first of all, how do we create that community aspect virtually? And second of all, how do we get ready, the clubs get ready when the time is right to make sure people come back? And to me, on that coming back, I think on average, the latest data that I've seen, 30% will come back, no problem. Another 40% might do, and the rest definitely will not. So that 40%, you've got to, as each of the clubs and teams must really do a lot to convince them that, first of all, it's safe, and second of all, that it's great entertainment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for me, those are two sort of broad areas that clubs and teams will need to consider.
Interesting. So we are just coming towards the end. So Patricia, your closing thoughts on this same point?
I don't believe in. I don't believe in a fanless sports. We must understand that sport is entertainment, and the best place for entertainment is happening is on the pitch. And we don't have here in Latam tailgate parties, but we get together before the game. We go, as we spoke with Jeff the other day, we go to have a Guinness after the games, or to celebrate, or to cry at the results. But fans will eventually return to the stadiums, and they will pack them also. What this thing happens is that, as Todd says, there's an opportunity to become creative and understand that we must engage with fans when they're not in the stadiums. And what do we tell them? Because again, dogs chase cars, but they can't drive them. So if I engage with fans, what do I tell them? How do I monetize that experience? And here again is where digital innovation and digital tools come in very handy.
Awesome. Great. So great. Thanks, folks. I mean, that was the last question, and which also means that we have come towards the end of the webinar. And once again, thank you, everybody, for attending, and a big word of thanks to all the speakers and the panelists. Really appreciate your time and efforts in making this really intriguing and enlightening for all. So yep, we would be sending everybody the recorded version of this webinar as well, just in case if you missed out on a few points, or if you want to revisit what we spoke about. And yep, we'll be sending you also a brief survey questionnaire on email. So I would really appreciate it if you guys could take about 2 minutes time to fill it out. It's just 5 questions, 1 page, no scrolling, nothing. So yeah, we do understand the importance of time. With regards to webinars, we're not done here yet. As we mentioned, it's a series. This was the first one. We'll be announcing the second webinar soon on our social media handles. So make sure that you follow Fanisco's social media handles on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And yep, we'll be coming up with the next one soon. Thank you once again. And that would be all. And we would like to sign off and close out this one. And thank you once again. And good day to everybody in America. Good night and good evening to everybody in the rest of the world. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Thanks for
Bye
your
now.
time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.